Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Leaders with Visions Public Policy Forum on our school districts. We want you to decide, so we have assembled a panel of people who have either plans or recommendations that vary in scope. We hope you'll listen intently, think about what they're saying, as the future of our parish rests on the education of our young people. So this is a critically important meeting. But before we start, we need to take a moment of silence in honor of a man who gave a lifetime of public service and died last night, our school board member, Ray Lamont. Thank you. To start the program, we are going to start starting with stage right. Michael Duresco, who is Senior Vice President for Economic Competitiveness from the Baton Rouge Area Chamber. Mike, come up.
Thank you.
I'm going to be your timekeeper, so kind of watch me.
Watch her and listen for the bell to ring. You will have 7 minutes apiece.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to be here, and I want to echo Jean's statements about Board Member LaManna. I know it's a sad day in Baton Rouge today. And we all send out our prayers to his family. I'd like to push back at the start of my presentation to talk about some things that have been in the community. Again, I'm the Senior Vice President for Economic Competitiveness at the Baton Rouge Area Chamber. The Baton Rouge Area Chamber, as you know, the lead economic development agency for the Capital Region. We are very involved in business development, retention, recruitment, but at the same time, from an economic competitiveness standpoint, we know that there are very important issues in the region that help to keep the Baton Rouge area competitive, whether it's healthcare, whether it's transportation, and the number one issue that people constantly talk about, obviously, is education. You've probably seen BRAC's commercials talking about a boom on the way, and there's so much emphasis on the need to make sure we have a workforce in place, and education is such a key component of that, making sure that our young people have the tools they need to compete, and making sure that our young people have opportunities right here in East Baton Rouge and in the region to stay here and find good jobs and have a good career. Part of that discussion, in the latter part of 2013, there's been a lot of discussion about the proposed incorporation of the city of St. George. Folks here today may be against it or may be for it. From BRAC's perspective, it is not something that we support. And as the discussion was happening among our board, it was very important for our board that we not just come out against St. George. If you'll recall, BRAC, along with BRAF, commissioned a report by Dr. Richardson and his team kind of showing the financial implications of what that incorporation would mean to the city parish government, and more drastically to the EBR PSS. And so what our board told us to do is let's look around to see if there's a solution that people can come together on. The idea being that the underlying issue that everybody's talking about is public education, and whether you agree with the incorporation or disagree with the incorporation, what we found in our discussions was that there was pretty strong agreement that there's room for improvement, that you can acknowledge that the system has been making gains, but still there's been frustration in the community in terms of maybe wanting a stronger pace for that improvement. So we started to have discussions with stakeholders, a diverse group of people, to find ideas. One of those meetings locally, somebody suggested we we contact a group called the Center for Reinventing Public Education at the University of Washington. And what it culminated into was a list of principles that we'd like to see. The first, obviously, that we really want a solution that holds the financial unity of the district together, to make sure that, we are as a community holding together, but also looking for ways that push a lot of the decision-making and authority and responsibility down to the school level, closer to parents, so they have access to the decision makers. So through those discussions, through that research, we were able to hook up with Representative Steve Carter, Chairman of the Education Committee, and Representative Dalton Honore to come forward with legislation to do just that. And, there's been discussion. Last week there was a hearing in the Senate Education Committee, and the bill was reported favorably there. We had a very long meeting last night at the House Education Committee, and it did not get even to discuss the amendments that will be proposed for the bill, so we'll come back next Wednesday. So it's an effort that I think is very important to Baton Rouge. It's an issue that sparks a lot of passion, and we're really proud to work with two representatives, Steve Carter and Dalton Honore, who are also very passionate about the future of Baton Rouge Public Schools. And we are open to input. We have said before, during, and after the bill was introduced that the discussion doesn't end. We are talking to as many people as we can to get ideas, to make amendments, and hopefully come up with a product that people can agree on. I may be just under my 6 minutes, but I think I'll stop there. Thank you very much for having me.
Our next speaker is Keith Brummery, and Keith is the Executive Director of Communications for the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. Keith?
Thank you very much, Gene, for inviting me and your organization's Leaders with Vision, Inc. Thank you also for that moment of recognition for Ray LaManna, who, when he passed, he was in the trenches. He was down there yesterday in the legislature, fighting with the rest of us for education. I think I wanted to start off by talking about what I just came from earlier today, which was a special community forum that we had at our headquarters building, where we were talking about, we had the Council of the Great City Schools, which is a Washington, D.C. Group that represents 66 of the largest school districts, urban school districts in the country. We had them do, because we needed a comparison with our test scores, our standardized test scores, the LEAP, with other school districts across the country. And they did an analysis, a comparison. And what they found is that, and it's in the packets, I didn't have enough for all of you, but it's in the packets, it says essentially that what their findings were is that EBR school district students perform on a par with, and in some cases better than, their counterparts in other large districts across the country. That includes Chicago, Atlanta, Broward County, Florida, Philadelphia, those kinds of places. So anyone who's out there saying that this school system is not performing is not using data to inform that kind of statement based on this that we rolled out today. Just a little subsets of that too. It found that white students in our district who are not on the free and reduced meals program, the federal program for those who household incomes are not very, or doesn't qualify them for the free lunch program, actually do better than anyone else in the nation. I need to repeat that. White students in East Baton Rouge Parish who are not on the free and reduced lunch program do better than anyone else in the nation. And then there are subsets of that from there. That presentation is going to be up on our website very shortly, so you'll get a chance to look at it. The press release on what that announcement was is in your packet, so you can kind of share that and look at it. Dr. Taylor sends his regrets. He couldn't be here, obviously, with the passing of the board member, which was unknown, and this the council people being out to do this presentation this morning, and everything else that's on his plate, he couldn't make it. I wanted to talk a bit about the plan that he has proposed that included the one goal, the primary goal, is for us to be in the top 10 of Louisiana school districts by 2020. And after today's presentation by the Council of the Great City Schools, that's not so much a stretch goal as one might think. I mean, we're efforting to get there, and these results that we saw in comparison with the nation, seem to indicate that we're going in the right direction. He has an effort involving empowering school-based leaders, that would be principals, to have site-making, decision-making abilities that's critical to escalating student academic performance. That's important because if you give them a lot of extra duties that include budgeting, transportation, security, facilities maintenance, stuff like that, a lot of them are going to end up retiring, and I was in a group who said that they're going to start to do that if all of these extra duties are cast upon them, because their primary obligation and responsibility is to escalate student performance. That includes classroom observations, curriculum control, instructional techniques, all of that stuff that they're supposed to be monitoring every day to ensure that students are learning what they're supposed to learn and they're able to perform well on the standardized test, which is our measure that we've been emphasizing for the past, couple of decades in every school district that I've been in to be successful. One of the suggestions that Dr. Taylor has made is to divide the system into about half a dozen zones, which would be made up of clusters of schools, high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, centers, superintendent centers, and magnet schools, of which people who live within any of these particular zones would be able to go to any school within that zone. Now, some of the magnet schools have prerequisites and test-in qualifications and stuff like that, so it wouldn't be necessarily the magnet schools, but say if you were in one of the zones and you were zoned to a particular elementary school there, and you preferred to go to another one, you could just go there. So that's kind of the choice we're giving parents. Basically, each of these zones would have about 7,000 to 8,000 students in them who would, as I say, have that ability. Embedded in each of these zones would be excellence academic service centers that would be mainly focused on literacy and numeracy. That is, they'd be looking, especially at the elementary level, to focus on those areas that are tested. So you'd have those centers that would take a look at how each school is performing and tweak things in individual schools to be able to do that. In terms of the community involvement, you would have councils made up of parents who would they would be in a position to influence principals in terms of what's going on in their respective areas. This is what I was used to in Chicago, to the point where Chicago even empowered those committees or councils to be able to decide who principals were. Now, we ran into some problems with that because depending on the community, you have prerequisites set by HR in terms of master's degrees and educational experience and stuff like that. But in some communities, there were fights because they wanted this particular individual who didn't have that qualification, and there'd be some pushback there, so that's not always the best way to do it. As I say, that's kind of summing up pretty much what he would have, and I heard the bell ring. But again, I think it's important for people to know that to shove extra duties onto principals that they've not asked for, in fact, I haven't heard any of them ask for any of these additional duties, is not what we should probably be doing at this point. And you should have educators and go to them and ask them what they think is best, because this is a complex, overregulated industry, and we need to know that. Now my jacket's being pulled, so I'm going to step aside.
Keith, you will soon learn that when she hits the bell, the time is up. Okay, our next speaker is Mike Polito, who is president of the Committee for Progress. Mike, would you come give us your recommendations?
First of all, I don't have any major recommendations, but I am here to tell you who we are. Can't hear me? All right. Well, I'd rather stand out in front and talk, but she won't let me do that. But anyway, I'll tell you who we are, what we're for, and what we oppose. Basically, that's what I'm here to tell you about. We are the committee. I represent the Committee for Progress. We are a group of businessmen and women who are interested in the progress of our community. So that's simply put. That's what we are. When it comes to this issue, we're really forever grateful for the folks in the southeastern part of the parish that have raised the issue in a vigorous fashion and have created a great debate. And so we thank them. We also thank the rest of the parish who have been having this debate and now have joined into it and are interested in our kids, all kids, white, black, doesn't make any difference, having the same success that all of the other ones can achieve, all of the private schools and whatnot. So we're interested in that. So that's what we're for. What we did was we got together and we decided we would put some effort in trying to understand what other people were presenting. We also like to thank the Chamber for actually putting forth a plan. We'd like to thank the school board for putting forth a plan. We think it's great that there are these types of discussions going on. What we are absolutely for, one, is local control. That's the main thing. Communities, neighborhoods, parents, teachers, principals, controlling the outcomes at the school level. Simple as that, community and neighborhood schools. We're for the money, following the student. Simple as that. We're for the money, following the student. And I take those two things, and after that, it's really, we're not educators. We don't profess to be educators. We're not trying to be educators. But that's what we want, local control. That's what we're for. What we oppose is the incorporation of the city of St. George. We don't believe it's necessary. We think we can resolve this by working together to come up with a solution that will help what they perceive to be the biggest problem, which obviously is education. So we think we can come up with a solution together. So we're not for that. We're not out here thinking that more bureaucracy, more taxes is a good thing. As a business person, we realize and we think that less bureaucracy and less taxes are a better thing. So that's what we're for. That's what we oppose. And I'll be happy to. I'm way under time, so, but that's it. We're just an interest group that is trying to help push things along, and we're looking forward to what happens at the legislature this session, and we'll get behind some type of program as it moves forward. Thank you.
Our next guest is Belinda Davis she is president of One Community, One School District. Belinda?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hopefully I can be my usual energetic self. It was a long night last night. But I'd like to say a couple of things today about, through the lens of being both a public policy scholar as well as the parent of 3 children in the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System. I am very concerned about the lack of stakeholder involvement in the production and the vetting of this bill. And to let you know a little bit about that, this bill was revealed to the public 2 weeks ago and has now already moved through 2 of our education committees without a single public forum being held in East Baton Rouge Parish in which parents have a chance to ask questions about the substance of this bill. There has been the reason there was a 6-hour discussion of this bill yesterday evening was because the Baton Rouge Area Chamber did not solicit opinions of principals, teachers, or parents when they were drafting this bill. While I can accept the fact that the meat of that bill had to be drafted in secret by an anonymous committee that I'm not allowed to know the names of, what I cannot accept is the refusal after that bill was drafted for the Baton Rouge Area Chamber to not seek out public input. And I'm going to be blunt, it pains me to be on the opposite side of them in this debate because they did us a huge service by commissioning the Richardson, Heidelberg, and Lorenz report about the city of St. George and the Richardson, Heidelberg report about the breakaway school district. But I believe that education policy should be made in the light and that my children deserve more than when I go to a committee hearing being given a set of 34 amendments to a bill and then having to discuss the merit of them. So I'm just going to tell you a few things that I believe are major problems with the Baton Rouge Area Chamber's bills that have to be addressed. First, the principals don't want this. Repeatedly over and over, principals from the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System said that this is not what they are trained to do. They are trained to drive instruction and to increase education outcomes. They do not want this. And this is not because they're scared for their jobs. Ms. Church is my principal, my children's principal. They dragged her out of retirement to run my school system. She doesn't need this job, and she will tell you she does not want what this bill gives her. Second thing that this does, and this is really, really important, this idea of the money following the child sounds really good in principle, but what it really does is it ties the hands of the school district to direct funds where they are most needed. So I also went to the Great Council of City Schools report, and what I heard was that middle and upper income white and black children are outperforming other school districts across our country that are large urban areas, and I also heard that they're outperforming national private schools. Where we need our help and our funding to be directed is to our low-income population. And what this bill does is it ties the hands of our school district to direct extra resources to those kids by only giving our school district 3% to the central administrative office plus 18% or so to handle retirement and a host of other things. And then the rest of that money has to follow the child. And the amendments to the bill do not fix this problem. I know that they tried to fix them, but the language in the amendments does not do it. And so what's going to happen is that, so to give you the example, South Downs Elementary is a school that serves predominantly disabled children. It's a pre-K and kindergarten center. Using the formula that they have given right now, and this is according to the 2012 MFP Accountability Report that is readily available on the Department of Education's website. If I use their funding mechanism, that school would be allocated about $17,000 per pupil each year to fund that school. That sounds like a lot of money. The reality is that very same year, the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System spent $28,000 per pupil on instruction at that school. Instruction, that's not feeding them, that's not providing transportation to them, that's instruction. Why do we have to do that? Because the IDEA Act that the federal government passed regarding giving those kids the education, a free and equitable education to those children, requires that we educate them. And we should, as a community, be concerned about educating our students with disabilities. So our school district, through its economies of scale, is able to save money and direct that extra money to South Downs and other schools that educate our students with disabilities. So what's going to happen is, the state recognizes that they do not fund special education adequately. If you went to the MFP task force this summer, over and over and over again, stakeholders said, you're not giving us enough money for special education. Well, guess what? The federal government doesn't care about that. And when you tie the hands of our school district to direct resources to meet federal requirements, the federal government is going to sue us, or our parents with students with disabilities are going to sue us, like they're suing charter schools in New Orleans. So I understand that this may be a very well-intentioned bill, but it is going to undo every bit of progress that the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System has made over the past 5 years, right? We are one of the fastest improving districts in the state. We have moved up in the rankings, right? Even while they're raising the bar, not only are we raising our bar, we're jumping other districts. And so this bill, well-intentioned though it may be, is going to undo the ability of the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System to move us forward at an even faster pace, which is what I believe Superintendent Taylor's plan will allow us to do. Thank you.
There's something that I would like to put before you. It's a little program that Leaders with Vision is very proud to support, and that is a change of terminology. We all know that words are very powerful. And as I listened to our speakers, I was reminded that I had not opened with this. We need to stop dividing ourselves as citizens. We are Americans of some descent. We're neither black nor white. We simply are Americans. So as you refer to yourself, if you feel the necessity to take pride, and I do, I'm an American, Native American Indian, then I am an American of the heritage of Native American Indians. I ask you to join me in uniting all of America as a people rather than dividing them by saying I am a German American, a Scotch American, a Black American, an African American. Let's all be Americans. What do you think? Can I have a round of applause for that? That was also to give you time to write your questions out, since I haven't had any questions come forward. Does anybody you have a question? No? You want to bring me a question? Okay. Sorry, my question person has a mouthful. Okay, for Mr. Brumley. Must be Mr. Brumley. Okay, Brumley. How does East Baton Rouge Parish propose to offset the time required for extra duties expected of teachers now versus the amount of time required in the classroom to meet actual educational instructional goals? Who has their backs?
I'm wondering if you mean teachers or principals.
Teachers.
Teachers. Okay, in terms of the extra time it's going to take them to do what again?
Oh, I'm talking about things like data entry, DIBELS tests, all kind of stuff like that.
Well, that kind of goes with the territory. I mean, when it comes to,
But
you know, what's required.
Up until just a few years ago.
Well,
And you're talking about hours of data entry required of teachers in addition to computerized continuing education. And I know for a fact that
there you go.
there are teachers in EBR that are being contacted on the weekends to be doing school-related activities and over Easter break, Christmas break, so that they actually have no downtime to rest.
Well-
And I find it incredibly selfish on the part of EBR, and I have heard principals asking and making statements to teach. I volunteer in several schools, and it disturbs me greatly what I see, because when a teacher wants to spend some time resting for themselves or take time for a doctor's appointment, they're criticized by principals and said, it's all about the children. You're being selfish by taking time to go to a doctor's appointment. And I just want to know who's got their back.
Well, I think the whole district has their back. My explanation for this is that, yes, in all of our jobs, there is an escalation of duties. This is data input you referred to and that kind of thing. Oftentimes, that's a get used to situation where, you know, as you get more familiar with the programs and how to input that data, which they have to do because they're they're the ones giving the students the grades and that kind of thing. It gets quicker, it gets easier, and it's facilitated, and it's up to us to give them the professional development they need to become familiar with, those, as you refer to them, extra duties to be teachers.
They were supposed to be trained last summer and didn't happen.
Well, I wasn't here last summer. All I can tell you is that I've been in other school districts where teachers complained about these extra input duties and things like that, mainly involving getting used to the technology. And once they do, they find that it's actually better than going to a grade book and writing it out like that. It's then saved, forever. So, that's the only way I can answer that at this point.
Okay, the next question. The next question is, changing the structure of East Baton Rouge has injected a lot of confusion into the conversation of improving the quality of education. But some primary contributions to this, parental engagement, environmental stresses, psychosocial deterrents. How do you propose to address these? And let's start, I'd like everyone on the panel to address this question. Michael, start with you.
Can you repeat all the...
Okay. All right. Changing the structure of East Baton Rouge Parish school system has injected a lot of confusion into the conversation of improving the quality of education. But some primary contributors to this are parental engagement, environmental stressors, psychosocial deterrents. How do you propose to address those three? Michael?
Thank you. I do want to start and just follow up on Belinda, because she's absolutely right. We have been very happy, maybe not working together with one community, one school district, but we have been very, very grateful to their work over the last couple of years in terms of the effort to have a breakaway school district, and now with the proposed incorporation of St. George. They are doing great work to engage the community and to make sure that that's not something that breaks the parish up. So I do want to acknowledge that. A couple other things, Belinda's absolutely right. The timing of this has not been ideal in terms of our ability to come up with this plan and get ready for the legislative session, and we acknowledge that. We're trying to do everything we can to talk to as many people, but we also have to acknowledge the reality that we knew there were going to be several other bills proposed during the legislative session to further the St. George effort. Senator White does have another piece of legislation that would divide the district up into 4 quadrants, that would not allow for enrollment across zones, for instance. That's not something BRAC is behind. And so we do want to make sure that there is another option.
Let's get back on topic.
Sure. The confusion, I'm not quite sure what's referred to by environmental stressors or the psychological question, but I do think that in terms of parental engagement, I think that is so key to the future of EBR PSS. I do want to acknowledge and thank Keith for Superintendent Taylor's plan that he's come forth with that does have community school councils, as he mentions, as our plan does, kind of has zones. We've, I think, had a good exchange of ideas. We had very good meetings with Superintendent Taylor while we were developing our plan and he was developing his. So I do think parental engagement is key. What we've seen and what we've heard from people is that student achievement does come with that engaged community and, making sure parents feel like their voice is being heard.
Will the person that sent this question come up and describe the 2 areas that Mike, don't replace.
Okay.
Since environmental stressors and psychosocial deterrents.
I wrote a question, I'm not.
No, I need the person who asked this question
Oh,
Oh, you're okay.
I haven't come up there, is what you're saying?
I'm sorry, I thought the question came from back there.
Environmental stressors indicate things like living in high-crime neighborhoods where children have to be cognizant of bullets flying at night, drug dealers in the streets, so on and so forth. Psychological stressors would be things like domestic violence in the home, single-parent home where there are financial hardships and the child is more than aware of what's going on. Things of that nature. More basic, fundamental things. When you look at Maslow's theory of the hierarchy of needs of a child, unless the basic needs of a student are met first, education can pretty much kiss itself goodbye. I'll be nice about that. But, so those are things that I think are not being addressed directly. And so, yeah, you break up the administration and you change things at the top, but when it comes to the hands-on stuff that needs to be addressed to make sure that the student is capable of engaging with the educational process, I don't see where those are being met.
and I think you're absolutely right. I don't know if the plan that BRAC has been researching and supporting can be expected to address those.
Well, you
I'm
want
sorry.
to be involved in the process, and if you're going to get your hands dirty, you might as well go all the way.
That's true. That is true. You know, as we've been exploring this, you know, what we want to make sure is that there are those equitable funding options available. I know that Belinda has raised concerns about our funding mechanism. We're trying our best to get it right so that there can be that ability for wraparound services. There can be that ability to address needs for low-income students. I don't know if you know, coming up with a plan, you know, that is focused on schools, if we have it in our plan to address those very deep community problems that you're talking about.
Keith, next, but I want to add to her concern and something that was said from this podium by John White when he was confronted with the fact that poverty is the acknowledged number one underlying reason for underperformance. And he said, that's not my problem. So we have an institutional mindset that needs to get to the root problems that face our children. Okay, Keith?
Is there a clock on me this time or not?
No.
I think in answer to your question is I don't think any of the bills that are currently in the legislature address what you're talking about.
Speak up a little bit.
Okay. I know that in all of the school districts I've been at, and that includes Chicago and Atlanta, that the school system is almost expected to serve as a clearinghouse for a lot of these for the social agencies. So basically, when the kids come to school undernourished and underclothed in many cases, and their school supplies are not there, the school district has to step into that. And I know you were talking about teachers. Teachers oftentimes are the ones that bring stuff from their own homes to do that, or take up collections for clothes and things like that. So that's stuff that school districts we're already doing that every day, because we wouldn't be able to educate kids if they're sitting in a classroom either cold or hungry or not having a pencil or that kind of thing to, you know, to move forward. So in terms of that's every day. In terms of this breaking up or the structure I think you had talked about, I think if you were to break off a small section like you were like has been proposed, what you end up doing is losing some of the economies of scale and also the choices that you have in terms of programs, because you're going to have what's just in that one little area as opposed to what the district-wide thing is. So you don't get to buy into the magnet programs that are offered around the district and that kind of thing. So I don't know how that really helps you. And then when you look at what we rolled out today from the Council of the Great City Schools, when it came to student performance, that's not a reason either. because students are performing well in that area and throughout the district.
The Committee for Progress has not attempted to address those concerns. They're very legitimate concerns. I do know that in the past, many organizations,
Use the mic.
I'm sorry, that many organizations in the community attempt to address those types of concerns, and I think it's a major community issue. It's not something that the Committee for Progress has addressed. And what we're looking at, again, is we're looking at fundamental structural change within the educational system, which does not address your concerns. And, we're also, if you just give me a second, we're happy to engage in that conversation at the right moment if it's necessary, which it probably is, but there are other organizations that are addressing that. Pat's group is one of them, and there's great work being done, not nearly enough. And, as a business person and as a former member of the Chamber Board, creating economic invigorating economic development and a good job will, for a lot of people, we think will help that. And so education is kind of that chicken and egg thing. We need great education to kind of bring people out of that, to get education at a higher level will bring more economic development. But we have not addressed it, so I can't speak to anything specific that way.
I like a quote that was made by a bus driver of the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System at a recent school board meeting, when he said when he stops and he picks up a child, he picks up that child's neighborhood, and he drops that child's neighborhood off at school. And so the question is, what can the school district do with the amount of time that it has those children? And I would say that there's a bill in the legislature right now that you can support, and it is Senator Nevers' bill on universal pre-K for the state of Louisiana, which our legislature made a commitment to several years ago and has failed to fund. So allowing those 4-year-olds to come to a school where they can get a quality pre-K education and get free breakfast and get free lunch will be a step in the right direction. We need to proliferate the healthcare centers that are available at some of our school systems. Another concern, quite frankly, is we have a $30 million budget cut that has to be made in the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System due to the failure of Zachary Central and Baker to take their legacy costs, the failure of charter schools to pay their fair share of unfunded accrued liability and their legacy costs. All of those things mean that we have fewer dollars to spend on the students that are left inside our school system. So that when my school faces an 8% budget cut, we have to make decisions like, does our guidance counselor go to halftime? Who's exactly the person that's supposed to be helping our children that are having mental issues and social issues? And so it involves adequately funding pre-K education and giving our school district the discretion to direct resources to the schools that need them most, where we can spend extra money for extended day programs so that those kids get after-school tutoring and they're in a safe environment until their parents get home from their jobs. So those are the things that I think that we can do. And that with one community, one school district, one of our goals is empowering parents. And we have tried to help schools that don't have PTAs and PTOs start those organizations and work towards getting parents in that school vested and involved in their child's education.
There is one resource that is not a taxpayer, you're not paying for it through your taxes. Noel Hammett started something with the Kiwanis that is putting books in the hands of children and at the various sites like Medicare and otherwise. And we would invite you to either call the Kiwanians or call us, because we would like to start a reading program in which we go in and read to the children and let them take the books home. Noel, thank you so much for starting that program, but it needed to be acknowledged. And I'm not going to be picking on Mike DeRisco. I do, and yes, I know about volunteers. I know about VIPS, and thank you for all of the work that VIPS does, volunteers in public schools. I'm not going to be picking on Mike Driscoll, but he has to leave first. So the questions that were directed to him, I'm going to take one after the other. The first one will be for the chamber rep. Can you point to any research supporting your positions?
James, another question. Here, Gene.
Sure, that's a great question. I'm glad somebody brought it up. As I mentioned earlier, we got
Oh, that's what happened. Excuse me.
as we had recommended to us locally, working with a group called the Center for Reinventing Public Education at the University of Washington, they have been doing work now for almost 20 years, and they've got this model of empowerment schools that has been taken up now in over 40 districts across the country. Denver, Hartford, Connecticut. The one that I would point to, based on their fact finding and their research, would be Oakland, California, which when they started to do this type of empowerment at the local level, they did see student achievement going up quickly, dramatically, and over a period of time, starting in about 2003 through 2010. They were the most improved district for every year in California, raising the California assessment score. The way they do their scoring saw their score go from the low 500s to the mid 700s over that time period. So that's just one example. I do have to acknowledge that not every place that follows this model does it at the same pace. People phase it in. People take some components. Jefferson Parish in Louisiana, Dr. Meza there has announced in 2011 that he was going to start using some of the Center for Reinventing Public Education proponents. He has not fully implemented it. But I know that as late as last year, he was saying that he felt it was a very good path. They have not done site-based budgeting, but they have tried to do more autonomy for principals. They've tried to do more equitable funding among schools, and they're seeing progress. So that's what we have in mind with our plan. It's not something that should happen overnight. In the legislation, it calls for kind of a 3-year phase-in period because this is change. So I think that's that one. What's next?
Okay, next one. Okay, in Senate Bill 672 and 1170, House Bill 1178, which restructures East Baton Rouge Parish School Board, why did the Baton Rouge Area Chamber remove the provisions to protect the representation of city residents who are largely African Americans, or as I would say it, Americans of African descent?
This question, I think, is related to another set of bills that the Chamber is supporting, which would reduce the size of the school board from a current number of 11 to 7. What we have found in our research across the country, and I think Great City Schools has some good research showing that over the past decade around the country, the average urban district school board size is between 7 and 8.5. Center for Excellence in School Boards did an exhaustive study finding that sometimes larger school boards tend to have more conflict, are less efficient, and they've recommended their ideal number is 7. As to the question specifically, the bills actually do include the provision that says that parishes with large municipalities should have representation that is consistent with the city population. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to clear that up.
Don't go away.
I'm not.
All right, why does BRAC feel, Baton Rouge Area Chamber, feel that it is their place to force East Baton Rouge Parish to change their board dynamics?
That's a great question, and I think that all of us in East Baton Rouge Parish should have a voice, should have interest in the direction and the future of the school system and the school board. And as I said in answer to the last question, I mean, that's part of our essence, is to make sure that the Baton Rouge area is economically competitive, and making sure that we've got a well-functioning school system, and that our school board is there assisting the superintendent and the principals and the teachers to be able to get the most out of what they do to help students achieve. So that's why we're involved in this issue, and we do think that this legislation could help to make the system work a little better.
Okay. Is there any evidence that making principals responsible for food service, transportation, health insurance, and benefits will improve student achievement?
That's an excellent question. As I ran through, there's lots of evidence from districts across the country that empowering leaders, school leaders at the local level does have an impact, a positive impact on student achievement. But one thing that I do want to make clear is that the way the legislation is designed is that these are options, that the way the legislation is designed is that principals would have a decision, a choice. They do not have to take on responsibilities that they don't want to take on, that they can rely on the central office for those services that has been pointed out. If it makes sense that economies of scale do not warrant taking up duties that they don't think that they should take on. But at the same time, we also acknowledge that really key to this kind of plan would be the implementation. And there should be an opportunity for schools to partner with each other in other cities and districts across the country. They set up networks of schools where principals can band together to really partner with whether it's a families of schools concept to get the services that they need. And again, like I said, always have that fallback of being able to utilize the central office for the types of services that they don't want to take on.
Who wants to rebut that, and so does Keith, apparently. Okay.
Well, I'll let you go because mine's about the school board
Okay.
size, Bill.
Oh, okay, and that's lobbying, and I'm trying to stay out of that. Anyway, the superintendent's plan in terms of how he would empower the principals is specifically for areas that would enhance student instruction, not for facilities maintenance and all that kind of stuff. It is building level decisions related to instruction technology, professional development, that's teacher training, budget, and they do have input into budgets right now. They get it in a form that's easy for them to use. They don't formulate their own budgets and all the hours it would take to do that from scratch. They feed into a kind of a template. Assessment, that's testing, extracurricular activities, partnerships, fundraising, staffing, and program offerings are what the principals would be under his plan empowered to do. A lot of that they already have, okay? But as I said earlier, and not to repeat myself too much, is no principal that I know of asked for these additional duties. And then if you were to make it so that principals could decide food service support, transportation, IT support, all that kind of thing, and they could go out and float RFPs for that, you would lose the economies of scale. That would cost more in the end. And if it were uncertain as to how many principals were going to opt to have the district do it, as opposed to them doing it on their own, how would we put out there requests for proposals that say, well, it could be like maybe 20 principals might want to use you, or maybe the whole district. It becomes a rather uncertain thing to go out and plan for these kind of things. So, So again, I think the more important thing is principals have said that they don't want these additional duties because they have enough right now.
And also in thinking about that and giving principals the autonomy to make contracts like this, the principals have the ability to make the contract, but there is no ability for the superintendent or the school board to disapprove of a contract. So if a principal has a contract out there, so that the school district and the school board have no control over the contracting practices of the principal, and then something goes wrong at that school, say the food provider serves bad food and all the students get food poisoning, all right? Who is legally liable for that contracting? It's not the school, because the school is not an entity that can be sued. It will be the school board and the superintendent who have no control over the contracts that the principal made, and moreover, have only 3% of the MFP in which to cover legal fees and the costs of such a lawsuit. This is a really big problem. And then also going back to the school board reduction in size, if we want to talk to our school board and as a public, as a local population, urge our school board members to reduce their size, we can absolutely do that. I could live with a 9-member school board. I don't think that it's unreasonable to shrink the size of our school board, but that is a local issue that should be determined by the residents of the East Baton Rouge Parish school system. And our local school board has in fact reduced its number voluntarily just in the last redistricting from 12 members to 11 members. So it's not as if they have never done this before. And on the issue of the municipality argument, I'm going to have to differ a little bit with Michael. Honore's bill that went out of committee yesterday, this House Committee for Governmental Affairs, in the digest, it says this. Present law requires that when a parish contains a municipality of a population of which is more than 1/2 of the entire parish, that the municipality have representation on the parish school board proportionate to its population. The proposed law accepts the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board from this requirement. So we will be the only parish in the state that has a city inside of it that makes up more than 50% of its population that is not required to have the city represented in proportion to its population on the school board. And that's problematic because the unincorporated areas of our school system look very different from the incorporated areas inside our school system in terms of both race and economic diversity. And so from a democratic perspective, I am very concerned about the removal of that provision, and as a city resident, I'm concerned about it as well.
Can I just?
Yes.
Yeah, we did have a good meeting with Belinda, and she brought that provision to our attention because when I read the bill, it's in there. So if there's a problem with the digest, I'm pledging to go back and look at that provision. Once again, I know that Representative Honore did not intend that as well, so I'll check on that.
Thank you. We love it when our panelists make commitments. In both proposals, the EBR and legislative proposal, are the plans to implement Principal 101 training to training principals. I think this is training principals.
I didn't write that.
But then, I don't know who wrote this, but I don't know. To implement Principal 101 training to training principals in this new paradigm in terms of how they will operate. That's the question. Anybody want to grab hold of that?
I don't think it was a question.
I'll try it again.
The question basically is you're asking the principals to do something different from what they currently do. Are you prepared to train those principals in any way to take on these new responsibilities and these new functions?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I couldn't read all of your handwriting.
Well, the immediate answer to your question, if it's required by law and the law is, it's enacted, we would have to, and they would need a lot of professional development when it came to, contracting out matters that right now the district does for them, transportation, that kind of thing. Yeah, we'd have to take them off their campuses and really just, crash course it, especially if it's going to take effect, the next school year. And so that's even more of an argument against this because it's going to be taking up more of their time and distracting them away from their primary work, which is escalating student performance, not making sure that the food service is there and the buses are running and, the IT service works and all those other things, which should be just, kind of just there, and they know it's there, they don't have to worry about that.
Did that answer your question? Thank you very much. All right, the next question, we're going to jump out. Why are all of you, that is not Leaders with Vision, we're just a facilitator, against the city of St. George when they are the only reason you are having this discussion today? And with that, we'll start with Michael.
My comments initially, I think I said very clearly, we were very thankful to the folks of the southeastern part of the parish. So we acknowledge it's why we're here, and we think it's great that they brought it to the table. We just think there's a better way to make it work, and we think that creating another city with the bureaucracy, the taxes, and that, they're going to have to raise taxes out there to do what they want to do. We just don't think that that's the best way to do it. We think there's another way. We're willing to listen to anybody who has a good proposal. So, that's our position, is we thank them. We think it's great that we're having this discussion. We think it's great that we're going to hopefully ultimately do some major, progressive thoughts in education. And we think it's great. So we thank them for that. And that's our position.
Yeah, I would echo that, especially the part about, the importance of everybody having the discussion. I wouldn't necessarily go so far as thanking the proponents of St. George. And as I said at the beginning, it was very important for our board to respond to this and try to come up with, a solution-oriented approach, but by no means try to come up with a solution that only addresses that area of the parish, but to try to come up with a plan that makes sense for everybody throughout the district and throughout the parish. So I appreciate the question. As I said, and as Mr. Polito said, as the Economic Development Organization, BRAC does not believe that the incorporation of St. George, for a number of different reasons, whether it's the tax issue, whether it's really sending a mixed signal about our economic development brand of the region to be fractured. We don't believe that is good for the region or good for East Baton Rouge Parish, but at the same time, we acknowledge that there's an underlying issue of people wanting to see a new approach for improving public schools, to re-engage people, to give another look at the public school system and see if we can hold the community together that way.
Anybody else, Linda?
Well, I would just say that I have also thanked Senator White for bringing this issue up, because it woke me up to the education issues inside my community, and I will never go back to sleep. And I can say that many members of my group feel the same way. St. George, I hope, will die in the next 6 months or so, and the movement will be gone, but my group will continue to work to improve education outcomes in the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System. And so for me, I think that this bill and this movement has made me aware of the dangers of further breakaways, and I think there are 3 gentlemen right here. Raise your hand, guys. Heidelberg, and Lauren, who can answer lots of questions about why the city of St. George and the Southeast Community School District would be disastrous for both the parish school system as well as the city and our consolidated government. So I would like to say that. And then I'd also just like to point out too, another thing that this has done is made me realize that the residents of East Baton Rouge Parish view our school system through a lens that's about 20 years old. They view us as an F school district. We are not an F school district. We're a C school district that is less than 5 points away from being a B. But they see us through a lens that is 20 years old. Our schools are not the same anymore. We have made enormous progress. And so this, what I like to say is, it's okay to have a perception that is not based in reality, but when you are given the facts and you fail to update your perception, that's called delusional, right? You're making decisions that are not based in reality. So if there are any questions for me, I have 10 minutes before I have to go to my kindergartner's egg drop to see if his egg survives being crashed from a roof. So I've got 10 minutes. Yes.
She has a question for you.
Yeah. Okay. It won't be.
We just have 3 more.
And it's about the media and how much the media is responsible for that perception that is no longer contemporary.
So I think that the media plays a role in the perception but that's also a function of how the media works. The media automatically gravitates towards negative stories, and so they're not going to cover the good things that are going on in our school system. So that is a huge problem. So I agree. I would, if the Baton Rouge business community wants to do something to help change that perception, they could do it. They could run a media campaign that highlighted the good that's going on, and they should encourage their members to actually volunteer inside the public school system through BIPs, because then they would see the fabulous things that are going on in our schools.
Idea, Mike. Okay, what are the specific strategies that the East Baton Rouge Parish public school system has underway to attract the middle class back to the public schools?
Last question that everybody was responding to about the breakaway district and all of these initiatives, where as a result of that, I have to tell you that that's not the case with Dr. Taylor's proposal. I've been through a number of superintendent transitions in a number of school districts, and I can tell you this, it is usually a year and a half or 2 when a new superintendent comes into a school district to get the lay of the land, or how he can reconfigure or she can reconfigure the district. It's not something you just come right in and do right away. You have to learn the culture and what's going to work and what's not going to work. So the proposal that Dr. Taylor has is one that he's developed, having been here for about a year and a half or 2 and observed what's going on, studied things. And basically, it's like a physician's creed: at the least, do no harm. You don't want to come in and start doing things and then have to undo them because you haven't really studied the district. The other question had to do with...
Can we hold that question for a minute? Since this lady over here has a question for Melinda, and she's leaving. Melinda, would you come up?
Just wanted to ask you real quick on House Bill 1178, which is Representative Honore's bill to decrease the number of seats on the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board. I was wondering if you know how many seats the other 3 breakaway districts inside the parish have combined.
I believe that Zachary has 9, Central has 7, if I'm remembering that correctly, but they serve populations that are about 25% of the East Baton Rouge Parish student body. And so, so you've got about, 7,000 students in Zachary with 7 school board members. And so my concern is I can't get my school board member to return my emails right now, but if you increase the size of their schools, their districts are going to be as big as a district in the Louisiana House of Representatives, with a single secretary between all of them to help them manage the concerns of their constituents. And I'm concerned that that's bad for democracy, their ability to respond to what their constituents want.
And I guess the second part of my question is, what incentives do you think that the legislators whose districts are not inside East Baton Rouge Parish have to make a good decision on this bill? And do you think that if they make the wrong decision on these bills, that there will be any consequences for them?
I don't think that they should be making decisions about how many school board members the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System have. has. That should be up to our community. And so this is, I'm a political scientist and I know how votes work, right? So they trade positions on bills in order to get theirs passed. And so if you are a representative from Tangipahoa, right, what vested interest, what dog in this fight do you have? And the answer is you don't have one. And so that allows for bartering among legislators, right? That's how all politics works. That's not just the Louisiana legislature, that's everywhere. And so I am very concerned, and what I asked them to do is, would your school superintendent want this? Would your school board want this? And if they wouldn't want it, why do you think it's best for my kids and the 43,000 other kids in the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System? And that's all you can do, is that hope that they're going to look at the situation through that lens and decide that they don't think that the residents of East Baton Rouge Parish should be making policy for Caddo Parish specifically, because these bills only apply to the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System. And if 7 school board members with 1 at large is so great and so efficient and so effective, then do it to all of the state. Do it now. If that's what's best and that's a best practice, implement it statewide. Thank you for all you do.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the board size issue. Committee for Progress is for a smaller board size. Less interference, less politics, dude, just let me talk. It's okay. Yeah, thanks. And the reason we are is, we talk about empowerment, and the question that you have, and the answer that Belinda gave was that she has a hard time getting her school board representative. Well, when I went to public school, my mother and father, they called the PTA, or they called the principal, or they called the assistant principal at Broadmoor, and that's how they got their information. And what they didn't call the school board representative, who is, as I understand it, not someone who's involved in the educational process down at that level. And so and again, I'm not an educator, I'm not speaking as an educator, but just common sense tells me that as a parent, I want to pick up the phone and talk to the principal. I want to talk to the teacher. I want to talk to the PTA. I want to talk to people at a local level. And so that's why we're for local control, less school board, and that's what we stand for. So
how does a smaller school board change the fact that you can call your principal on the phone?
I just wanted to respond to Belinda's comment that she can't get her school board member. I don't think whether they're 7 or 12 or 10 or 9 is, I just think that, and I think the Committee for Progress looks at it as, we want to empower, we want to drive communication down to the local level, not at some higher level. That's all.
Sure. I just don't understand how that bill does that.
Well, I can't answer that, but I can tell you.
You support it and you don't know why it does.
Well, I do support it. I support local control. What I support is local control and decisions being made at the local level.
Unless it's the legislature.
I'm sorry?
Unless it's the legislature doing it.
I don't have control over the process of how it's done. And neither does the Committee for Progress. We're here supporting the change, and we do believe that it would be a good, positive thing to get local control. The process is the process. I'm not, I didn't set the process.
Let me remind you that you can be a part of the process. This is a town hall meeting about this subject, and each and every one of you, whether you're for it or against it, let your legislators know. Call their offices, call the House of Representatives, you need the numbers, we'll get them to you. But get engaged, okay? And number 2, about the study that Jim Richardson headed up, I don't remember the other 2 names, Lawrence, and if you go back, if you will go to our website or to our blog, you will be able to view Dr. Richardson's presentation for when we discuss that. Right, Jim? Okay, so that's up there for anybody who wants to go back and do their research. The next question is where we left off. What are the specific strategies that East Baton Rouge Parish Schools has underway to attract the middle class back into public schools?
Well, we've been kind of doing that for a long time in terms of the magnet programs that we have. I mean, that's in all the districts that I've been in, those are the programs that tend to, attract and retain your people that have that class of folks that have choice and know it. If you offer them more that's there. I'll give you an example. I was at a National Association of Black Journalists reception last night, and I ran into a woman there who works for the Department of Health and Hospitals, and she said that she sent, when she first, when her kids came of age.
Hold on a second. Could I get a round of applause for Michael DeResco, who has to leave?
No problem. She said that she had sent her kids to parochial schools. And as they went into high school, she was finding that the rigor and what they weren't being challenged, is the way she put it. And she said, I decided to send them, and she lives in the Woodlawn area, to send them to Woodlawn High School. And now she's very happy with the rigor and the challenging nature of the curriculum that they're being exposed to every day. And she said this unsolicited. She just came up to me and told me that. So, I mean, I think that's what you have to do. One of my tours in Chicago, and I've had like maybe three tours of Chicago back and forth in terms of my career, when my son was going into middle school and then into high school, I knew that, and this is before I had anything to do with public education, that I could, how would I put it, that I could work the system and I could get my son into those kind of premium programs and kind of premium schools that I knew about. So an active, involved, alert parent can figure it out and then position their children in order to get those programs. That's something that if, when you break away and do things like that, you're not going to have much of a choice. I went to Catholic schools because I grew up in D.C., and my parents felt there was no choice. They weren't going to send me to the public school system in D.C. because it wasn't a good system at that time. I don't know where it is right now, but they spent money for that. And I think I got a good, well-rounded, focused education, but there were no extras there. There was no, very few field trips, as I recall, very solid in terms of reading, writing, arithmetic, reading with understanding, writing with clarity, and then getting up and presenting. They always made you present, and then corrected your language while you were speaking. I mean, I think that's something maybe we don't get enough nowadays in elementary school, is having the kids present. But I think it is past the time when we just automatically look to parochial schools, especially Catholic schools, and think that they're going to be better than your public schools in certain instances. Catholic Church has had its problems, and I think one of the areas that we haven't focused on is parochial education and the rigor and the quality of it. I think we make that assumption. Somebody had said that earlier, that the perceptions now are 20 years old. I think the perceptions about private and parochial education are 20 years old too, because public education has gone beyond it in many ways.
Okay. Standing in for Belinda is Tanya Nyman. Now, we have one question that would be, since taxpayer monies are being sent to alternative schools, such as charter schools, voucher programs, etc., why are these alternative schools not held to the same standard as the public school system, the same testing?
Let me see. Could you, let me see that again, if I can.
The question was, why aren't vouchered students held to the LEAP test, basically, I'm interpreting, the LEAP test and the same standards that you at the East Baton Rouge Parish School System have?
I don't know that I can answer that. I mean, I've only been here a few months, except to say that I'm not sure if they're not under law required, then they don't have to do it. So when you say why, you'd have to ask those who enacted the legislation, because I don't know.
It's my understanding that the charters do have to adhere to so it's the voucher students don't. And that would be a question for the legislature. I was in one meeting where someone was proposing that they do take the same test, and it was interesting that one of the legislature's response was, why would we want to subject them to that? I'm sorry, I shouldn't even try to paraphrase his argument because it was so convoluted, but it was alarming. But the charter schools, I wanted to point that out because the charter schools are subject to the same testing. And one of the things that I think people should understand is that one reason why we need strong school board members and strong school boards is because they can act as advocates for us at the state and hopefully eventually at the national level. A lot of the problems and complaints coming from parents right now do not have to do, even some of the complaints directed at our local school board are actually a result of state and federal policies driving high-stakes standardized tests and unfunded mandates that are draining the school system of money for extracurricular activities. And so if we don't have school board advocates to talk to as elected representatives who can then turn and have some influence, it weakens our political influence yet again. Because we certainly have less ability to influence state legislators than we do our local representatives. And so the charter question, their whole business model is built on high-stakes testing. That's how they demonstrate their superior performance, even though a lot of people would say that testing is not the only means to evaluate a quality education. They have to do that to demonstrate that their charter should be renewed. But unfortunately, we all have to subscribe to the same testing. So I'm hoping that parents do begin to put that puzzle piece together, that the proliferation, and please know, I am not, I know I end up sounding like I'm anti-charter just because there's such a strong charter movement, but I think charter schools can serve a very useful purpose within a local school district to serve specialized populations. But I do think we need to be wary of a system that is built upon just high-stakes standardized tests and to understand that that is the connection and that what most people are really having difficulty with in public education right now, those of us who have children in the system.
Mike, do you have anything you want to add to that? Okay. What happens to the superintendent's proposal if the legislation is stalled? Will the superintendent move forward quickly, or will his plan slow down also?
The superintendent intends, with school board approval, to go forward with his plan, as much as it doesn't bump into any legislation that gets enacted. So, obviously he's not going to conflict or do anything to put him outside the law, the statutory requirements of what we do. But this is his plan, and he's come up with it over a number of months after being here long enough to get the lay of the land, and he's intending to go forth with it.
I have a question. Is the school board, I just don't know. Has the school board committed to that? I mean, does he have to get the vote of the school board?
The question was, is the school board committed to it? It was presented to the school board. I don't believe it has come up for a formal vote on their behalf yet. Some of the measures may not require school board approval, but others will. So, no, it hasn't. It's been proposed.
Okay. Did you want to say anything? Okay.
Committee as a whole.
Why aren't you, I'm sorry, Michael's not here to answer this. Perhaps, Mike, you can step in for him. Baton Rouge Area Council at the chamber, at the legislature demanding Baker, 1 mile from Zachary, be fixed first. Smaller districts, Zachary, Central, Assumption, Livingston seem to be working better.
I'm not on the board of the chamber, so I'm not going to speak for the chamber.
Well, can you just give us your committee's opinion of that?
The Committee for Progress has not looked at that issue, so I can't.
Okay, all right. Sorry, that Mike got out of there before I got your question. How can you talk about the school system's effectiveness when we have single school charters, effectively a single school board school, and that's okay?
I'm sorry, read the question.
How can you talk about school system efficiencies when we have single school charters, effectively a single school board school, and that's okay.
I don't know. It needs to be translated.
What it means is you have Central that you say is too small, Zachary is too small, Baker that's too small, you need Big East, Baton Rouge, but you've got charter schools or voucher schools that are essentially one school board school, and they run the whole thing. So how can you not be, at the legislation, we need to get rid of those, when you're standing here saying that East Baton Rouge has to be big. It can't be split in two, and it'd still be the fourth largest city in the state.
Well, you know, if you're talking about charter schools, they are part of the system, and they have to comply with they're run by, you know, other outside organizations, but, and they get their FTE through us too, I mean, they get their funding, but they're not like totally independent. They have to comply with, you know, our certain rules involving, they avail themselves of our transportation, all that.
The same thing, and so does Central.
Right.
But you're saying the fourth largest city in the state would be too small.
Well, I don't think I said that. I didn't say it was too small. I'm saying that if you're already part of the district, I'd just like to see a reason why you want to break away, other than, you know, we want some independence or something like that. Because you lose the economy of scale, you lose the choice, as I say, in academic programs.
You keep bringing up economy of scale, so why aren't you at the legislature saying that Central needs to be eliminated, Zachary eliminated, maybe the school board system should absorb Ascension and Assumption also, maybe if that's your...
I can't speak to that because I'm not walking into legislation and proposing these others come back into the system, but if somebody else does.
I think I gather where you're at, but I think we're for.
My country family.
I'm much more comfortable not sitting here, but we actually are for local control, which I think is, you're looking for smaller, an independent school district is what it sounds like you're promoting. And what we're saying is that there's a better way, that if you can get the local control, that hopefully if the legislation is that we are for, will push local control, which will create smaller systems in essence but getting the efficiencies of the larger system without breaking up a city. I mean, I think that now you're talking about if you went to an independent school district. I'm sorry.
You have it both ways. Your argument's either that it's got to all be one, and, you know, I mean, the argument's about these efficiencies.
I'm not arguing with you about whether or not an independent school district for a certain area or smaller independent school districts would create a better system of education. That's not what we're talking about. We're here talking about supporting the legislation, and I'm not against an independent school district. I'm not for an independent school district, and the Committee for Progress isn't. That's not something that we've looked at right now. What we're looking at is local control, choice, the money flowing down, and not breaking apart a city and a parish. That's what we're for.
Well, the city's already separated between parish and city. I mean, it's not that St. George is asking to be annexed to Assumption Parish.
Right.
That I could understand. This is just a city that already has other cities in the parish. So if you say that can't be a city, I guess you're saying it's not effective for Gramercy or Kenner or Baker or Zachary to be cities in the parish. There's an inefficiency there.
Well, there's always the adage that hindsight is 20/20. And if there were hindsight, East Baton Rouge Parish, instead of digging its heels in the 70s, would have gone ahead and gone wall to wall the entire parish in one city, like Orange Parish did. And we would not be having this discussion. It's because of the status quo from before we didn't address the problems then that we're dealing with them now. And that includes the legacy cost. Barbara, am I right on that? Thank you. All right, one last question, and
I apologize. I'm thinking as an economist, the way I was trained, so when you all start talking about these efficiencies, that's what throws me off rather than some of these like legacy costs. That's where that question was coming from.
I can talk to you about the St. George issue after, if you'd like.
Okay. And just, I said, just remember, Baker and Central paid out and left their legacy cost on the our East Baton Rouge Parish school system. The last question, and before I issue an invitation, this is relative to Charles Tezier's op-ed piece in The Advocate earlier this week. Why are students who are eligible for gifted services opting out for magnet? Keith?
This was not an op-ed, it was a story he wrote, let's see, this week, why students who are eligible for gifted services are opting out for magnet. I know that there's a limited amount of space at Baton Rouge Magnet High School, and it's designated that certain, and this was done in the past, I guess, gifted and talented category students who, you know, were channeled into the school. So I'm not sure what this opt-out option is. I'm not clear on that.
I think I know what they're talking about.
Do you?
I do.
Please.
So a lot of the kids in the gifted program are opting, aren't following and going to McKinley or Woodlawn, where they have two gifted programs, and instead they are choosing to go to Baton Rouge Magnet High School. And so that's the concern. And so, and I think actually the only 7 gifted students were actually allowed admittance into Baton Rouge Magnet High School last year. And so there's great concern among the gifted parents about their kids being able to go to Baton Rouge Magnet High. And it's important to note, though, that some of those gifted kids who do go to Baton Rouge Magnet High, after a year, realize that it's not the appropriate program for them, and then they opt back into the gifted programs at McKinley and Woodlawn, because it is a different type of instruction. I've attended the meeting around the gifted program, and I'm an old mom, so I'm a few years away from the high school question. My kids are still in elementary school. But I think that there's some of it is a perception question. Some parents are concerned about the school climate, and whether they're concerned their kids aren't going to have like a traditional high school experience in McKinley and Woodlawn because of their perceptions about the traditional school population. But more often than not, many parents, once their kids go there, find that they're very happy. I know that other kids have had some issues, but I think that has been, Woodlawn especially has seemed to have a remarkable program going on, and actually maybe we should ask Barbara Freiberg to get up here and talk a little more about it, since I haven't had time to.
Well, I mean, basically, the issue is when they don't get into Baton Rouge High, they don't want to go to Woodlawn or McKinley.
Right. And I know that the Gifted Parent Association right now is doing a lot of work to address parents' concerns and also address the misconceptions about those programs. You know, I've heard such good things about both of them. And then I've heard other people express concerns. But I mean, overall, I hear positive answers to that, and particularly to the class size available to the children and the specialized instruction that appeals better to gifted kids.
You know, I think, again, we're dealing with perceptions that are not really in evidence sometimes. And the one lady talked about the 20-year lag in changing people's opinions about things. One of the, in my short time here, one of the schools that I went to and spent a day and shot a video there was the Scotlandville Magnet High School. And that is up on our website now, along with Broadmoor and Baton Rouge Magnet High School. I think you ought to go look at that. That's an 8-minute version of the 30-minute reports that are video packages that are up on the government channel as well. And I saw a full day of really innovative, interesting teaching and learning and their magnet subject areas that they have at Scotlandville. It was just, you know, in television you need elements. And when I sat down with the principal and asked for what elements would I get visually to show the engineering program, the law program, and that kind of thing, he says, oh, okay, well, we have robotics. We can show you how the robots work and how they put them together and program it and things like that. Law, they had a mock trial going on, so they showed that where the kids actually got to play judge, lawyer, witnesses, jury, that kind of thing. So there's quality in a lot of our magnet schools and programs. And, you know, if you don't get into or whatever, and that may not be your best school anyway for Baton Rouge Magnet High, there are other programs there. That's the variety that we're talking about that this system offers.
Thank you very much. Let's have a hand for our panel. What's left of it. And I sincerely invite all of you to join Leaders with Vision for multiple reasons. Number one, they're listed here. Number two, your presence and your membership help us to put this up on social media and make this available to the public who can't come during lunchtime. So please give consideration, besides the fact you get a member discount, and which, by the way, is calculated that your membership is only $5 a month, but if you attend online, that means you save $45 of the $60 for membership. Your membership costs you $15. But this does support public education, and I'm not talking about the school system, I'm talking about education of our community and about issues that they may not have more than a 30-minute lunch hour. The gentleman standing back there in the white shirt has the applications. Please pick one up on your way out. And thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you next month on the third Thursday.
Thank you, Jean.
Bye.